So building culture of peace in Rwandan schools has a challenge and opportunities. And this has to tell us something.
When you are studying peace, you start by getting and asking questions, and you end by having more questions, because peace is a philosophy. Teaching peace is a way of preventing any kind of crime, any kind of genocide, any kind of hatred. So we are in a good track. Let us put our energy together. The ministry is there.
This is my umbrella. And the rainfall problems, I have a poverty, large family.
From March 24th to 25th, 2022, Hotel de Mille Collines is hosting the Rwanda Peace Network 2022. This is a closing conference of building the cultures of peace in Rwandan schools network. The latter is a collaboration between AGC Trust, the University of East Anglia, UK, and the University of Rwanda. This conference is a free space for the participants to share knowledge about the culture of peace in general and in schools in particular. They gained insights into the findings generated from the research conducted by different thematic groups over the past 12 months. These thematic groups are: first, curriculum, pedagogy and teaching; second, social and emotional learning and positive discipline; third, mental health and well-being; fourth, inclusion, gender, transformative learning and socio-economic disparities; fifth, inclusion, special educational needs; sixth, cultural arts and humanities; seventh, democratic government and youth voice; eighth, engagement with parents and communities. Participants included network members, government officials, representatives of government institutions, researchers and academics, representatives of civil society organizations, teachers and students, artists, community practitioners, and faith-based organization leaders. In a nutshell, Day 1 was marked by speeches by different personalities, including Mr. Fred Mutangwa, the director of Aegis Trust Rwanda, who welcomed the participants; Honorable Edward Bamoriki, the Minister of State in the Ministry of Youth and Culture, who officially opened the conference. In the first session, participants were introduced to Rwanda Peace Schools Network by Prof. Sylvestre Nzahabwanayo and Dr. Sam Rafworth. In particular, Prof. Sylvestre presented the achievements of Rwanda Peace Schools Network, and Dr. Sam elaborated on positive peace violence in schools, emphasizing on the conceptual framework. Dr. Sam also made an introduction on everyday peace in Rwanda's schools with a focus on children's and adults' responses to the question, what is peace? In the second session, which focused on peace education and the national curriculum, the panel of Dr. Jean Leonard Buhigiro, together with Dr. Amin Gabonzimo and Dr. Emmanuel Somana, was given the floor to present their findings on learners' perceptions of peace education in primary schools in Rwanda. In addition, Dr. Jean Leonard Buhigiro presented the findings of his research, which investigated the understanding of the complexities of teaching the genocide against the Tutsi through a career life story. The third session evolved around the theme of social and emotional learning, mental health and well-being. Mr. Shast Uwihoreye elaborated on caring for children and young people's mental health with lessons from peer-led group therapy with former street children. After plenary session, Dr. Sam carried on with embedding culturally relevant social and emotional learning in the school day, lessons from free schools in southern Rwanda. As it was observed, the conference takes the format of the workshop rather than a lecture.
So, the Rwanda Peace Schools Network Conference 2022. This is a restitution of the work done by the Building Cultures of Peace in Rwandan Schools project that was implemented by the university in collaboration of first of all, the funding of UK Research and Innovation through the Global Challenges Research Fund and the three partners around the project. So we have the Aegis Trust, the University of East Anglia, and the University of Rwanda. We are very happy to welcome you. Murakaza neza, twishimiye kubakira.
For a very good introduction, Honorable Minister, State Minister at Minister of Youth and Culture. We have also in the room a representative of SIDA, the Swedish International Development Agency. Welcome. We have members and representative of civil society organizations. You're welcome. And we have different universities, University of Rwanda, University of different universities, of course, and academic members of academic community. I want to give you a warm welcome to this session, and as Sandra mentioned, I'm Freddie Mutangura, Executive Director of Aegis Trust. Aegis Trust has worked alongside with the University of Rwanda and University of East Anglia on this project, the Rwanda Peace School Network. I want to thank you all for giving up your precious time to come here to be with us today and contribute your perspective in the seminars for the next 2 days. Today's conference entitled Building Culture of Peace in Rwandan Schools. And the project was conducted 30 months, establishing an international and interdisciplinary network of academic researchers, public, civil society practitioners, policymakers, young people, and other stakeholders, and they all come together to develop a conceptual framework for defining and evaluating culture of peace in Rwandan schools. To promote action research collaboration toward the research objectives and facilitate learning exchange for social impact. So building culture of peace in Rwandan schools has a challenge and opportunities. And this has to tell us something. First, it tells us that the peace we are seeking is not an event or activity. It's not something that can switch on and switch off. It's a culture. Something which is built over time. Something that has to be embedded in the fabric of the life of a school, of a family, of a nation, and which has to be internalized by individuals. Secondly, it tells us that building a culture of peace is a challenge. This is true, and it's shared to every country in the world. But in Rwanda, we still continue to face the challenges of reconciliation, the healing, and the wounds of genocide and Tutsi. Finally, it tells us that we have opportunities in doing and building this culture of peace. And these opportunities are among us today. And we are very, very happy that as we're discussing, we're going to be inspired by your experience and expertise and in different domains. So because there's always new challenges and opportunities, there must be always learning as a reflect on how we build peaceful schools and the communities. We must never stop reflecting and finding ways to improve. In the years I've been working for Aegis Trusts, I've seen these challenges, I've been seeing these opportunities, but also I've learned a lot. Our first program was limited in scope. It was based on inviting students to come to Kigali Genocide Memorial and learn about the processes that lead to genocide and the importance of being good citizens and standing up against evil. To this, then we added the story-based methodology, which helps learners to critical reflect on the difficulties, decisions faced by real life from those who stood for peace, even in difficult circumstances. Thank you, Honorable Edward. While we were thinking about embedding storytelling in our program, Edward have played a tremendous role in shaping and giving a sense to our content by giving us his own story. And thank you very much for doing so, because the impact of these all sessions we had with you and your story itself had an impact that we can see even today in this conference. Thank you, Edward. In more recent years, however, we have understood that to be truly transformative, this focus of learning the skills and the values of peace, such as critical thinking, empathy, personal responsibility, trust, cannot be taught merely through a single workshop at Kigali Genocide Memorial that most of school children will experience only once in their journey to adulthood, but must be embedded through the school system in the curriculum and the pedagogy of every subject and every level. So that's why we worked together with the Rwanda Education Board, supporting to move to competence-based curriculum in which peace and values education is cross-cutting theme, with today's generation of teachers being taught how to embed in these lessons in their own teaching. The Rwanda Peace Schools Network has aimed to support this effort, but it is pushing us to go a step further and to think of ways that peace can be embedded with the whole culture of school. Aegis Trust has been always evidence-based organization. So the collaboration between Aegis Trusts, University of Rwanda, University of East Anglia in the UK, around this project of building a culture of peace in Rwandan schools, has highlighted the importance of creating significant partnership between academia and civil society, and especially in area related to research and the creation of best practice in peace building. And of course, this is the best way to ensure research meets the practice. Over the next 2 days, as we explore this theme, we'll be asking 2 questions. We'll be asking, what is culture of peace? And I'm very happy to hear from Sam, who's going to answer some of these questions. Where are we now? And where are we going in this process? What are the challenges? But also, we need to explore the opportunities in this process. I cannot thank enough the thematic group leaders, the project leadership team commitment to complete these activities despite being challenged by COVID-19 global pandemic in the last 2 years. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the funders, UK Research Innovation, and thank you for everyone who contributed to make this project possible. Concluding by wishing you a fruitful discussions, and Honorable Minister, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you and say a few words. If the MC allows me to do it.
I was invited to open the conference. So my word is to say the conference is officially open. That's all. But when people are discussing about peace, and you still arrive, you need to give a contribution, because we all need peace. I was given a chance to go to Vermont, and some people like Fred and maybe others in the audience did this kind of peace courses. When you are studying peace, you start by getting and asking questions, and you end by having more questions, because peace is a philosophy. But it's a philosophy that everyone needs. At the age of 7, in my village, we started to see the conflict between political parties. At the age of 10, we experienced the genocide. So, when you experience the genocide, whatever side, being on the side of perpetrators, being on the side of victims, so you really know, or you have something to talk about peace. In this conference, the time we are going to spend here, I will be happy to hear from the young generation how they understand peace as the second generation, or the questions they have for the old generation. We don't have old people here, but we are not underage. So based on their question, we'll have something to talk about peace if it comes to the Rwandan experience. So in the Ministry of Youth and Culture, we are out there, we are talking about Rwandan values, to help the young generation in schools to understand the journey, the history, and to try to support the journey of building the culture of peace in Rwanda. We started this year, and we have seen a big gap when we asked young people what's wrong. The answer was the discussion between the parents and students or the kids at home. People are not talking about the history. They have fear to talk about the history. Some of them, they are wounded. And there is no way we are going to be a peaceful country tomorrow, 100%, if we can't exchange, if we can't talk about the past, if we have fear to talk about our history and our personal story. Again, there are some countries who are running peace from our country. So, meaning we have something to tell people, but we don't have to forget to tell the story from our kids. So this session, if the students can take their time and tell us what is missing, then in this program, our program, we try to get the answers and to fill the gap. The peace is needed. We know the cost of not having peace. I think the readers between the colonial leadership and the First and the Second Republic, they did it by intention. They refused to teach peace because they wanted to commit genocide. They wanted to kill people along the journey. So this program, Teaching Peace, is a way of preventing any kind of crime, any kind of genocide, any kind of hatred. So we are in good track. Let us put our energy together. The ministry is there to support, and I'm very sure the coming generation, this generation and coming generation, will not face the same problem. My story, it is going to end by me. His story is going to end by him. So we are going to get new stories, because what you're learning from school, being science, being technology, we have time to add values, we have time to add peace, we have time to talk about our past, our present, and our future. This is really nice work. We did not have this chance when we were young, but you are getting this because we know the cost, and we know the country we need, the Africa we want. It is in our hand and in your hands. So again, as I said in the beginning, my responsibility was to open, but I wish this will not be just a conference. Get something from here that will help you in 10, 20 years to come. So get something from this conference that you will use in your tomorrow responsibility as a reader and as a parent. Because I'm very sure Dr. Sam and others, they brought something from us. Please take it and run away with the package, with the message from these experts. They are here today, not tomorrow. Tomorrow you are the one to replace them, because when you are a student today, tomorrow you are no longer a student. You will be practicing, you will be a parent, you will be teaching, you will be a reader. But what you have today is what will help you tomorrow. So, in our program, in the schools, we are talking about the philosophy of Rwanda, if we talk about values, about culture, so we are more about philosophy. We are bringing the philosophy and the thinking of Rwandans. So you have your way of teaching peace, and you have our way of teaching peace, but the goal is going to be the same. So the philosophy of Rwandans is hidden in Kinyarwanda, is hidden in our values, but exploring this philosophy, it's badly needed. Because if we say in Kinyarwanda, for those who understand, if we say kwimana Rwanda, if we say kwimana umuntu, kwimana mugenzi wawe, it's protecting each other. And you are not getting peace when I'm not peaceful. Peace, it's a win-win game. So you can get money from myself, from my pocket, and I get nothing from you, from yours. It's okay. But if you expect peace from me, 100% I expect peace from you. So this game, it's a win-win game. So using our philosophy, our Rwandan philosophy, our country philosophy, our own philosophy, so I'm sure 5 years to come, we are going to be more peaceful. Once again, I thank you for the invitation. The ministry is there when we need to collaborate. If you want to see or to know what we are doing in the schools, we are very open to work together, and for sure the bright future is waiting as long as we keep the spirit. Thank you.
There are various actors involved in peace education in schools, but it's noticeable that there is no too limited coordination of initiatives undertaken in this area. I would like to repeat that. There are various actors involved in peace education in schools, various stakeholders involved in building peace in schools, but there is a limited coordination of those initiatives. And this might lead to the lack of tangible or more advanced impact. And so in this network, we are launching out a wake-up call for a coordination of these initiatives or these programs. I thank you very much for your attention, and look forward to exchange with you throughout these days, today and tomorrow. Thank you very much.
By that often we can feel good for 24 hours and it wears off, but actually what we want is change, and to continue what's good and to change what's not good. You mentioned that you were 10 years old at the time of the genocide against the Tutsi. I was also 10 years old. I remember that summer well. It was a very hot summer in England. I was in my sort of 5th year of primary school. And I remember being able to run around the playing field with my friends doing cartwheels and kicking footballs, while in another part of the world, here in Rwanda, children were being killed. Not for anything that they'd done, just because of who they were. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I first came to Rwanda 11 years ago, because I had friends who were Rwandan. I knew their stories, and I came here 11 years ago to do my PhD research. And the question that I had was about growing up in the aftermath of something like that. And I wanted to understand, how do children reconcile? Children from different backgrounds. I became a school teacher at College St. Andre in Nyamirambo, where I followed the same cohort of students over 6 years, and from senior 1 to senior 6, and I watched these young people grow up. And through that experience, I came to understand a couple of things in relation to peace. One point that I've made quite forcefully is that Rwanda is not just a post-genocide country. Rwanda is also a country that has a future. And young people growing up here, they of course think about the past, and there are many societal wounds that are yet to be healed. But there are also new challenges, challenges relating to the huge opportunities that many people can see and the fear that they won't be able to make the most of them. Challenges of inequality and poverty and struggle. And peace is a global endeavor. I don't think there's a country in the world that's got it right, that's achieved peace, but it's a struggle. And it's a struggle that it's been my privilege to be a guest in this wonderful country for so many years now, to watch as people are on that journey. You also said that a few things about the philosophy of peace. A point that was made, and you made it very well, is to have a Rwandan philosophy of peace. And that's a key point of this network that Sylvester was explaining. It's about decolonizing knowledge. It's about asking, what do people in Rwanda think of when they think of peace? You mentioned peace is a win-win game. I love that. I wrote it down. I think I'll tweet it later and quote you. Peace is a win-win game. You wrote that peace is protecting each other, and talked about the bright future that's available to all. So those are just some thank yous and some thoughts at the beginning. I also want to thank everyone who's here. Let me just say something else. So the remainder of this session, we will finish on time. So we have about 30 minutes. I'm not here to tell you what peace is. We are going to briefly look at a couple of academic concepts of peace, but actually the point of this session is to talk about what we call everyday peace, which is what do people in the households of Kigali and Huye and all over the country, what do people think of as peace? How is it experienced by people? Also, what do people think of as violence, and how is that experienced by people? So those are the questions that we're going to address, and the answer is going to come from you. We've already done some interesting research we got together some children, their parents, and their teachers, and we put them into different groups, and we had them answer this question as well. And we looked at some of the similarities and differences in the responses of what is peace. So that's going to be our starting point today. So let's just get one more thing I want to say. The reason why you're all sat in tables is because the remainder of the next 2 days, it's not a series of lectures. This is not a lecture series. There has been some interesting research done, and we hope to briefly share with you some of the findings from that research, or 8 different research projects. We can't possibly do justice to that in the time that we'll have, so read the book when it comes out. But we also are here to learn. Every single person who's in this room today has been invited because you are special, because you are doing something related to the subjects that we're exploring, and because you have a unique perspective. So you're sat in the tables that you are, and if you're too much on your own, please do join a group, because there will be opportunities for you to discuss as well. And we have a long lunch break. We'll be strict on timing because I want you to have opportunities to network and meet each other. I know a lot of you, and it's a great blessing to be able to say that, because there's some wonderful, amazing people in this room who I know have some really useful and thoughtful insights. Okay, that's okay, thank you. So, the question that we're addressing then, to start, kind of the foundational question for this network is, what is peace? Is peace merely the absence of violence? Or is it something more? And what I'm going to ask you to do now at your tables is take a moment just to give your kind of initial response to that question of what is peace. If you were to summarize peace in a sentence, so you have a minute to agree a sentence, and then I'm going to pick on a few people and I'm going to ask you, what is your sentence to answer this question? What is peace? Okay, the time starts now. There's people online to do that in the chat.
Thank you. Here we say that peace is the presence of the conditions that makes everyone feel respected, loved, valued, and they have access to social justice so that they can enjoy the rights that they have, they're entitled to, but also they can contribute as part of their duties.
I love that. I hope you caught all that, Sylvester. In fact, you know, with those definitions, I feel like we could go home. I feel like the job is done. There was some... you get so used to wearing them, don't you? It's bad enough with my English. I just, with those definitions, I almost feel that my job is done today. But I want to sort of share with you one of the things that we did with the children. In fact, I might ask Jean de Dieu, who is the head teacher at the Gumubano Academy, to come and join me for this section. Share, I have to hold the mic for you, I think. If you could just share what's happening here, and then we'll introduce the questions for them to do this activity. Don't worry, I'm not making anyone lie down on a table today. John, did you talk me out of it? There's another mic.
Thank you so much, Sam. In our research, we really did a number of workshops with parents, teachers, and children. And in the workshops, we also had various activities which were really very interactive. One of the activities we really did is called body mapping, and it was, we really did this activity with the children and all participants with a reason. We really wanted to understand what everyone thinks about the concept of peace. And this is really like a very good start, because after knowing what people think about peace, that's how people can really get to do a lot of activities around that. And the body mapping activity, we put children in small groups, and not only children, but also all participants. And every group had to do the activity. It involved like someone lying down on a paper. We had, I think we see that here. And
so they're drawing around her, right? That she's the body.
Yeah, and after drawing, after having a sketch of a person on the paper, they had discussions. And these discussions were about what they feel like about peace from each part of the body. What peace feels like with eyes, with ears, with legs, with arms, and so on. Some, I feel like we can also do a kind of this activity here, and maybe we are not going to draw on the paper, but we can have a discussion.
Exactly. So maybe in your groups now, we'll give you sort of 3-4 minutes just to. So this is brainstorming and quick fire. What is a peaceful mind? So you can put that around the head. You can draw a little man on your paper. What is a peaceful mind? What is a peaceful heart? So what does peace feel like? Okay. What are the thoughts of peace for the mind? What does peace look like? What does peace sound like for the ears? What are peaceful words for the mouth? What actions build peace for the hands and the feet? Maybe because we don't have a huge amount of time, What I might do is ask a different table to do a different one of these, okay?
Yeah.
So, if you could be the head, okay? So, what is a peaceful mind? Okay, what are the thoughts of peace? Can you be the heart? What does peace feel like? And then we'll have the table over here. If you could be the eyes. So, what does peace look like? This table in the middle, if you can be the ears. Yeah. And can you be the mouth? Can you be the hands and feet? And we've got 3 more tables.
In our research, we really did a number of workshops with parents, teachers, and children. And in the workshops, we also had various activities which were really very interactive. One of the activities we really did is called body mapping. And it was, we really did this activity with the children and all participants with a reason. We really wanted to understand what everyone thinks about the concept of peace. And this is really like a very good start, because after knowing what people think about peace, that's how people can really get to do a lot of activities around that. And the body mapping activity, we put children in small groups, and not only children, but also all participants. And every group had to do the activity. It involved like someone lying down on a paper. We had, I think we see that here. And
so they're drawing around her, right? That she's the body.
Yeah, and after drawing, after having a sketch of a person on the paper, they had discussions. And these discussions were about what they feel like about peace from each part of the body. What peace feels like with eyes, with ears, with legs, with arms, and so on. Some, I feel like we can also do a kind of this activity here, and maybe we are not going to draw on the paper, but we can have a discussion.
Exactly. So maybe in your groups now, we'll give you sort of 3-4 minutes just to. So this is brainstorming, quick fire. What is a peaceful mind? So you can put that around the head. You can draw a little man on your paper. What is a peaceful mind? What is a peaceful heart? So what does peace feel like? Okay. What are the thoughts of peace for the mind? What does peace look like? What does peace sound like for the ears? What are peaceful words for the mouth? What actions build peace for the hands and the feet? Maybe because we don't have a huge amount of time, what I might do is ask a different table to do a different one of these, okay?
Yeah.
So, if you could be the head, okay? So, what is a peaceful mind? Okay, what are the thoughts of peace? Can you be the heart? What does peace feel like? And then we'll have the table over here. If you could be the eyes. So, what does peace look like? This table in the middle, if you can be the ears. Yeah. And can you be the mouth? Can you be the hands and feet? And we've got 3 more tables, so we'll go for another hands and feet, and we'll go for another heart and another mind. Okay? And oh, you haven't got one. You can do eyes. There we go.
Okay, I think having peaceful mind in our book we say that it is having mental wellness and having ability to do everything that you want, planning for the future, you have self-life, you are able to do whatever you think, whatever you like, and you are able to implement your thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you. There was loads of rich stuff in that. I'm glad we're recording this. Even the idea of being able to plan your future, you said. So being able to sort of think about and plan your future is an important part of a peaceful mind. Who else had mind? I gave it to another table too.
From head is head.
Yeah, head. Yeah.
Yes. Head was this one.
Yeah, but there was another head.
Oh.
It was over there. Yeah, Natasha.
So many heads.
We think mind with peace is a mind with satisfaction, being considerate, productive, collaboration, tolerant, or adaptive.
Great, so also the way that we use our mind to collaborate, to adapt, to work with others. Okay, let's do heart. Over here.
Heart.
Heart.
I would say that act of peace is not have harming factors with self and with others.
Okay, so not feeling harm and not feeling anger as well, I suppose, towards others.
What you were saying, the feeling on, actually the fact you don't feel harmed by your environment, what you do, what others are doing with you, the result is a feeling of happiness. That we took a feeling of happiness as a result of all those things.
Got you.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. What does that group have?
Thank you. In our group, we find that peace feels like loving, generosity, appreciation, happiness, joy, forgiveness, empathy, confidence, and other feelings.
Great. Yes, some really lovely positive feelings.
I don't know all of it, but okay. For me, what sprang to mind immediately was yesterday I was in John de Dieu's school and I saw the children playing with the teachers playing volleyball, and there was sheer joy. Do you want to say something else? You had some other.
Yeah, okay, and also peaceful eyes are eyes that can notice the environment, and just watching the environment, it can bring happiness and joy, as Andy said. Another point you have here is that peaceful eyes can also bring, can notice good things are happening around us, and watching things around us happening is also about learning. And by learning, that's how we grow, and by growing, that's how we get skills, and that can lead us to peace.
Thank you.
Thank you. So as a group, we discussed how those body parts in the hands of the can participate in providing the positive peace, as the doctor was saying. And through that we thought that like hands can be used in helping others and doing charity works so that we can provide peace. And for feet, we talked about those works for peace, like What to Remember, and other works where we're advocating for peace. As we say in Rwanda, that if here we say that if we are to grow peace, we will have to use all our body parts. So thank you.
That's a great, mentally well, being positive and wishing good to others, working together, being patient. They said that they felt peace when they're playing, when they're studying, when they're at school, when they're happy. One of the things that we noticed, though, was that when we actually asked this question to groups of teachers and parents, they didn't always have exactly the same responses as the children. The most common response that parents gave is that peace is security. To quote one of the fathers, he said, "If I have food, I have peace." And whereas, and so they were much more likely to think of it as peace as being, there's no violence and I'm being fed. A lot of the children seemed to want more from peace than simply being fed and not being the target of violence. Children were more likely to conceptualize peace in terms of an inner peace, and also the way that they play and the way that they relate to each other. Now, I don't want to overemphasize that, because, of course, some children, children didn't all agree with each other, and the adults didn't all agree with each other. But I did find that interesting, that we could almost observe within the data that there was this sort of almost stronger appreciation of peace amongst the rising generation. And in those adults who struggle to conceptualize peace, somebody mentioned earlier on what you can see in someone's eyes. And I felt that what I could see in the eyes of those adults was trauma and struggle. And it's, you just sensed it. You sensed that it was difficult for them to imagine a peace beyond simply having what they need. And we found that interesting. One sec here. So within the academic world, there's this concept of positive peace that Sylvester's already talked about, and that peace is more than just the absence of physical violence. It's also important to know other types of violence, but it's these terms up here, physical violence, structural, cultural, symbolic. These are academic terms. They're not terms that you and I would use in our day-to-day life, right? I wouldn't say, I'm really feeling like structural violence is being done against me today. I wouldn't say that. But it's important that we understand what these ideas of violence are. So if peace is the absence of more than just physical violence, structural violence is the idea that there are kind of economic structures that disempower people, that people are not equal, and that people's life potential is limited because of those structures. So you can look at, for example, the difference in life expectancy between communities and between countries. If people are dying younger than they need to die because they can't access the care that they need, or because their life is harsh, that's a form of violence. Cultural violence is when a culture sets up a kind of set of norms and values that basically says that it's acceptable for some people to be disempowered. The women in the room will know what I'm talking about, I think. Symbolic violence, these are basically sort of symbols and ideas that mask the fact that violence is happening, that makes it appear normal or right. But these are academic terms, and we think that for this research that it's helpful to be aware of them, but our interest has been more in this sort of everyday experience. So if I come to here, this is how children express their experiences of violence and their experiences of peace. So violence is experienced as poverty, lacking basic needs. It's experienced as embarrassment, so social embarrassment, feeling excluded, feeling disempowered. Peace is experienced as security, feeling respected, being included, being free. We heard from you earlier on about this idea that you can think about your future, you can think about where you want to go, so feeling empowered and feeling free. And that's what we've been targeting with this network. I just want to finish with one thought in terms of why take a whole school approach? What do we mean by this? What are these different thematic groups about? Let's go back to decolonizing knowledge for a moment. If you look in kind of Western academic journals about Rwanda, there's almost an obsession with history education. And there's so many articles that's written about history education. When I was doing my PhD, I've been at St. Andre for about a year and a half at this point. I met, I won't mention the country or the gender, but I met, because I want to anonymise this person, but I met somebody who was foreign, who was in Rwanda doing a study. And they told me that their study was on textbooks, and they were criticising textbooks and basically trying to demonstrate how textbooks were still doing violence to people. And I asked this person, have you been in a school? They said no. I asked them why not. They said because my supervisors told me I probably wouldn't be allowed into a school. and I said, I just think you need to know that the whole foundation of your work is wrong, because those books you're looking at don't even get used. And that's not how children learn. Let me propose a question to you. Do you learn peace from a textbook? Is that how you learn your values? Where do you learn the versions of peace that we've been talking about? Where is that learned? Can you just understand a theory and then suddenly feel it and live it? No, of course, children have this massive life world. They have a family, they have a church, they have peer groups and friendship groups and all sorts of things throughout the school day that impact on the way that they're feeling. And so this network has been trying to look at some of those. So over the next couple of days, we'll be looking at things like, yes, of course, curriculum and pedagogy, and how do we embed peace within that. But we'll also be looking at things like sports and playtime and arts and friendships and the way that schooling can care for children's mental health, and how does social and emotional learning get embedded within all of this. And so what we're trying to do is open things up and stop looking at peace education as an hour a week on the curriculum, which anybody who's in a school knows is the least important hour a week because it's not science and maths.
Very important for this conference. The comparison between young people's perspectives and adult ones in terms of understanding peace. Sometimes, if not all the times, we tend to promote adult perspectives of peace. And most of the time, interventions we design are adult dominated. Part of this network is also to allow young people's voices to surface, so that interventions we design take into considerations young people's perspectives, views, and voices. So if you could use this time really to highlight that distinction clearly.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'll try to keep this brief so we don't overrun. I think the first thing to say is I want to be very careful that I don't suggest that there is a adult view and a child view of peace, because I think the reality is that there are many different views amongst children and adults. But this was just from the research that we did with these particular adults and children, that we sensed that the children had a view of peace that was more relational. It was more about how they feel inside, but it was also about the way that they cooperate together and the way that they connect with each other. Whereas a lot of the parents had a view of peace that was more about basic needs being met. You know, and I'm sure everyone's familiar with kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That we have kind of our basic needs, and then we have, you know, our basic need being security, the need to not be killed and to not die prematurely, through to realizing higher needs. I think that children were more likely to express a desire for some of those higher needs. But I must stress that that's obviously not the case even with the people in this room, because the answers and responses that you gave today, and many of you are Rwandan adults, were very abstract and very much thought about these kind of higher needs. I'm guessing, I don't know, I'm guessing, I think that potentially the parents that we were talking to, some of them were poor, some of them had a lot of trauma, or some of them told us they had trauma, some of them I think found life a struggle, and my guess is that perhaps when people's day-to-day life, just to meet their basic needs, feels like a battle. And when they live with that level of fear and insecurity, it's difficult for that person to conceptualize as peace as being anything other than meeting the needs that are right in front of them. I think it's what we were seeing.
Shutterstock Music.
Because even some teachers may be integrating peace and values in their lessons without knowing. How did you really find it?
Thank you, Jean-Leonard. Normally, when people are more than one person together, you will find some aspects of peace or violence in the interactions. It's either one or the other. So the fact that there is a class, even if you say, come together and do this, you're encouraging a value related to peace, that is collaboration. So we noticed that teachers are doing different things in relation to the integration of peace and values in their lessons. But let me just go back and then first talk about the lesson plans. We realized that some teachers were including peace and values as a cross-cutting issue in their lesson plans. But then when you get to the class, you don't see any trace of it. Then we asked them, so why did you put it here and then in the class you didn't talk about it? They say, well, we just put it there because there's space for cross-cutting issue. But we really don't know how we can integrate that in the lessons. We have not been trained about that. So there was, we didn't find deliberate, decision by teachers to teach peace and values as a cross-cutting issue. Second, we found, Dr. Mirazi has said it, we found that the aspects of peace that we noticed in the class are in some subjects and some themes. You can find themes in the social and religious studies subject, for example, that encourage cooperation, collaboration, respect for one another, human rights. So those, when you are teaching those subjects, you are encouraging this. But for subjects like sciences, geography, physics, mathematics, it's difficult, and the teachers are indicating that it's not really their responsibilities, because there is someone whose subject includes peace and values, so it is their responsibility. Then in assessment, Dr. Abina said that it's not really there. The aspects of peace implicitly and even explicitly it's not there. And we noticed even in the lesson plans where they mention the cross-cutting issues, peace and values is the least mentioned cross-cutting issue. In one lesson plan, we noticed that for 6 months, we looked at the lesson plans during 6 months. Peace and values was mentioned twice in 6 months in the lesson plans. For the teacher who has been consistently planning the lessons first, but also putting cross-cutting issues in the space. Yeah, that's, I think, what I can say. But we also found one teacher who was really doing well in integrating peace and values education in a science lesson. But when we dug deep into her background, we realized that she studied psychology and she did some work, some social work somewhere. So she was drawing from that. So apparently it is some background that she got from some other places where she worked. But in education, it seems that for the deliberate decision to teach this concept is really limited. Thank you.
I think my answer was not responded. My question was not responded to.
Oh.
I want your findings. What did you observe when you went in class? The interaction between teacher and learners, or between learners themselves?
Maybe the methodologies that were used by the teachers. Yeah, okay. Dr. Amin talked about assessment. Yes, the curriculum that we are using, the competence-based curriculum, recommends using the methods that are engaging, interactive, and that are inclusive. When we observed, first we observed that teachers some teachers of those that we observed do not pay attention to the gender aspect of the teaching and learning. So you'll find girls sitting on their own and boys sitting on their own. They would also request students to work in groups, but without much scaffolding or enough instructions on how this is going to work. And funny enough, they say they're working in groups and then the teacher is saying, please keep quiet. Why are you making noise? So how do you expect people to work in groups and then they're not talking? So yeah, there's this understanding that, that the class should be silent, when there's no voice coming out, that's when the class is concentrated, like in an exam, things like that. We also observed that, maybe we'll talk about this later, the language of the teacher, I mean the tone, and is it kind? Does it treat children with dignity? You find a student is failing answering the question and say, yo, really? How can you fail this? Such comments were also observed. And the lessons were generally teacher-centered. When I say generally, of course, there are a few lessons and a few instances where teachers were trying to make students collaborate. But one other challenge, big challenge, is the language of instruction. It's difficult to use engaging teaching and learning methods and allow students to work together and cooperate and discuss and then come up with their own perspectives of the things if they cannot express themselves in the language of instruction. And teachers, we could see that, at least I could see that where I was. It's like when teachers see that there's a visitor, they think that if you switch to Kinyarwanda, you're breaking a law. And we are supposed to use a language that learners understand. So if they are struggling with English, at some point, I think teachers should know when to switch to a language that learners will understand. But then, when that happens, they think they are breaking the law, and they continue to use the language that learners don't understand, and you can see the class is not really, active. Thank you.
Another question to Dr. Amin. Are there other challenges you observed where the teacher face challenges to integrate the PVE, peace and value education, in the teaching process?
Yeah. Thank you. There are many challenges. One of the big challenges, he has already said it, is the medium of instruction. So can you, some people, they just say it's no more a problem. We have been, trained in English for 10 years, 20 years. But can you imagine someone who taught 30 years, 25 years, and then in a few years, without enough motivation to teach in English? Then that is a challenge. You can see that there is a teacher, mainly in primary school, that's the language policy changes in primary school, primary 1, 2, and 3. Now it's in English, but it's in 2020, right? So before, they used to understand that there's a training of English, but that was far from them because they were using the mother tongue while teaching. So it's a listen. So then you can see that there is a lot of that the teacher wants to communicate, but because you are using a language which is far from you, you need your brain to interpret it, and when you are going to talk, you are not talking as if you were talking. So there is a lot of processing the mind. And for me, so you give what you have. You can't give peace when you don't have peace. So they're struggling inside. So it was really a challenge. Another thing is that where we went in the DP village, there's a lot of, students, who came in class, they are not prepared, they don't have, materials, and you can find some, they don't have even a pens, and they also even a notebook. And when you ask them, they say, we don't have it at home. And sometimes you find it's very difficult, to make sure that it's participating while there's such kind of, a problem. There are also other challenges. I don't know, you talked about the punitive method, about the management of learners. Yeah, you talked about it, so it's still a challenge. Actually, we observed a lot of corporal punishment, but when you for us, I remember when I went to observe one class, I didn't see any student who is disciplined in the way which is like, for example, heated or whatever. But I could see around, in the corner, I remember, there was a stick. It was there. And when it is like here, I think even if we don't use it, you can find. It is like if I bring a gun, I put it here. I don't say anything. Then you know that you have to behave, otherwise there is a punishment here. So I said, even if they are not using these sticks, it's because I'm here. But I'm sure when I'll be out, these sticks are not there as decoration. So there was a lot of, by observing, you couldn't see they are hitting students, but you can see some of the tools which has used. That's all about one finding. And then another thing is that we accompanied the teachers in the classes to see how they are preparing the lesson plan, how they are. We looked at how they are conducting, the actual teaching, and then we looked at the assessments, and then at the end how they conclude the lessons. So then, in all the findings that we are just getting is that there is a positive and positive elements in the lesson planning. In one side is that when you read the curriculum, there is there is an indicator how peace should be taught. At a school. But when we're looking at the lesson planning, in some subjects, for example, religious studies, there is a lot about peace. So they talk about peace, about tolerance, so you can find there is. But in other subjects, like mathematics, so, by the way, some teachers were asking, but you are exaggerating. How can we integrate peace when you are teaching mathematics?
It's not our responsibility.
It's not our responsibility. Tell those people who are doing humanities, those who are doing, religious studies to talk about those things. So there is also need in that, to understand how, my colleague talked about it, how to, to integrate peace in all the subjects, so it can be a cross-cutting. And then there is another findings that maybe we can talk about the voice of learners. How learners do they understand peace? And another thing is that in evaluation, our evaluation, I think there is a major problem with assessment. So assessment for us, it is a violation of peace. I'm sorry to say it, but that's the way. So it means that when we want to assess learners, we have to be serious. They shouldn't be peace in examination room. So you have to make sure that they are in an environment which is scaring, so that they will answer and give you the right answers. So it's somehow, that we need to advance at another level, that we have to look at not teaching, planning, but also assessment is the very most important part, not the most important, it's one of them, that we should look at, not if we have talked about peace, but in practice, then we violate peace. I don't think that will be also okay. So there's those issues, and So I think my colleague can talk about how the students, learners, they voiced peace. Thank you.
Before proceeding, you mentioned the series of teachers' response. I think this is related to the interviews you conducted with them. And Emmanuel mentioned that with your research methods, you had to observe what was happening in school, in the classroom. So I want to hear from Emmanuel your observation. What did you really observe during the class?
A challenge, not only for teachers, but also to the students. Thank you.
Okay, if we talk about corporal punishment, I feel scared. So I want to ask Emmanuel, after talking about this corporal punishment, how do learners think about the teaching of PVE?
Yes, we also wanted to understand how learners understand or how their perceptions about the way this concept is taught, and their responses are not really different from the findings that we observed in the classroom, because they said that yes, we learn about peace and values education in Rwanda. There's a topic about gender in social sciences. The teachers tell us go to the groups and then tell us to respect one another. There's a topic in Rwanda. We learned about gender equality. There's another topic. So they were focusing on subjects rather than on how teachers integrate these concepts in their lessons. Of course, they don't see that. And they're just looking at it from the subject's perspective. But we also found that there are some other ways of teaching about peace, including some messages that are sparingly shared by their teachers. But the messages are not really planned. They just come when an opportunity arises. For example, when there's a conflict, and then they're solving it, and then at the end, the teacher says, guys, please stop fighting. Fighting is not good. You should have done this and that and that. Students also mentioned the different clubs that were in place, but due to COVID, many of these were not functioning. Clubs like the ones about unity and reconciliation, environment, AIDS. But others also said that the clubs are no longer working. Even before COVID, clubs were no longer working. So it seems that this concept of peace, because it's not directly related to sort of teaching and learning, is not assessed, and schools are not ranked based on how peaceful they are. Maybe it's not part of in ego. I don't know. I don't know whether it's in the strategic plan. So you realize that when it happens, it's just random, and that's the situation.
Okay, are there other mechanisms which are in schools which can contribute to build the culture of peace?
When we were observing lessons, we also observed the school, the environment. We wanted to see whether there is any signposts that encourage peace. We wanted to see, but we didn't really find any. Even in the classroom, you could see the walls are blank. So there's no. If you get to a school, there's no sign that it's a place where students go and learn about peace.
Yeah, actually, when you see, students, for me, when I was observing, then when we were also doing analysis, we could see there is like two sides. Like on one side, you can find that learners they interact well without any problem. During the break, they play together. But there's an issue of boys. They have they have a lot of sport and physical, activities they are doing. And when you can see that there's like a ball, it is for, of course, the whole, the playground for just is occupied. If you see the size, and when you see where they are playing, then you find the boys are playing and they are much engaged. But girls, they are, somewhere just in the corner, trying to occupy a little space in order to give to their brother a big space. So then it's also a problem. And that's like a gender tolerance today. Okay, to say, for example, even if there is one playground, you are going to use it for maybe 15 minutes. Then also others will use 15 minutes, or we can use together the playground. That's was somewhat an issue. So he talked about that. This about about the signs which should be there. So there's really. I didn't find any the same about talking about peace at the school, because learners, either we want or not, they learn by observing. They can see what is happening. And another thing which is a positive note is about during a break, you can find that teachers, they have where to sit, maybe, and they are talking, they are sharing experience. So that's also a good thing. But outside, no one is watching what is happening, unless there is an issue of fighting between two students, so they have to come in order to get a good judge in front of the teachers. But mostly other things as challenges has been talked about by Dr. Emmanuel. Thank you.
Okay, now.
Maybe Dr. Charlie will add just one little addition about corporal punishment and maybe how students also view it. I don't know whether you're going to ask us about that. When we ask students how they perceive their schools, whether they are peaceful or not, students in 4 of the 5 schools that we investigated, they say that their schools are peaceful. But later on they were sharing, when we dug deep into that and asked them about how they are treated, we realized that they were not safe. Which again refers to the understanding of peace, like absence of violence. But then later we realized that violence is there. So they shared about how they are treated, and they said, for example, that they said our teachers use abusive language. They said some teachers say so even those guys, the roofman help, they are more intelligent than you. Then they label students as in this the undisciplined. When they find you in breaking the law once, they say so, and then that's how all the teachers will view you, and they will treat you as such. There are heavy and harmful forms of punishment, corporal punishment, kneeling down in front of the class. Some say that we are beaten by our educators, and when we are beaten, even when we are naked, when they find you in the bathroom and you are late, they beat you right there. There's forced labor that can go up to 5 days. Missing class or a simple mistake. And then they said something very important, which is related to some of those concepts that were shared earlier, that they are not listened to in matters related to their own learning and well-being. So decisions are taken for them without them being involved. And then the result of that, some students retaliate using the same mechanisms that teachers use. If I'm stronger than the teacher, then if he beats me, I'll also hit back. Then 2 other challenges. The students notice that there are groupings among the students according to their socioeconomic status. The rich, birds of same feather flock together. Where students come from, whether it's schools or regions, and then gossip about students from low socioeconomic backgrounds. Yes, and then smartness, we are smart, you are not smart. So one student said something very, very interesting and concerning. He says some students do not value one another in the same way, depending on whether they are from rich or poor families. Students from rich families go together and do not want to associate with or talk to those from poor families. And then another comment made by those from the rich family said, telling those students who had not paid for the school feeding, yet they were being fed, say, you are feeding on our account. So we have paid, you have not paid, and you are eating. So such comments, can lead to something bigger that can jeopardize peace.
Before moving to recommendation, you are depicting a pessimistic view of schools in terms of peace education. Which good lessons can we learn from your research you found in schools?
We have seen that in one school that there's some lights of hope. There's a school where positive mechanisms are used to address issues like students' discipline, conflicts, and so on in one of the districts. And students were saying, for example, when a teacher notices, when we asked students and teachers whether they were happy to work in this school, both students and teachers said, we are happy to work in this school. And then one student in one focus group discussions, students said, when a teacher notices students breaking the rule, they approach them, try to reason with them. Then when they do not change, parents are sent a convocation to discuss the case with the teacher, and then they jointly devise strategies for stopping that behavior. So that's a positive way of addressing these issues.
I think maybe when you complete your research, we'll be able to find a more positive aspect.
Yes, they are.
Finally, what do you recommend after conducting this research?
We have seen that teachers believe that one of the effective ways of managing students' behavior, the effective way, or the only way, is use corporal punishment. They are convinced. So, and then the policy prohibits that. But they continue to do that because they don't have an alternative. So we recommend that the Ministry of Education and other educational partners to support teachers on the adoption of positive behavior management strategies so that they can be equipped. They can be helped to know that there are some other effective ways of managing students' behavior. They need also to be empowered on the integration of peace and values in their day-to-day lessons. Then students need also to be taught about the importance of upholding peace-related values in their mutual relationship and relationship with others. And then finally, the class should be supported by out-of-classroom and out-of-school activities that promote peace for students to be part of the peace-building processes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel and Dr. Min. I think we requested them to leave here. The question will be asked after my presentation because we move to the second phase of our group where we are going to talk about that paper. Remain seated, remain seated.
Thank you very much. Allow me to introduce this time Dr. Sharon Rubigiro, our next presenter. Dr. Schadrac Migiro conducts research about teaching sensitive topics, mainly teaching genocide. And Dr. Schadrac is going to share with us some of the insights in his paper, Understanding the Complexity of Teaching Genocide Against the Tutsi Through a Career Life Story. You might have noticed that on the tables there are some papers, blank papers, which I put there. Dr. Iona is going to tell us what we will do with that. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Iona.
Okay, thank you, Sylvester. Okay, as you can see on the screen, that is the title of the paper. The papers they have put on your tables, we are going to use them for doing some activities. I learned from some that the presentation should be somehow interactive. I don't wish to talk alone. Okay? Now, as you can see on the outline of my presentation, we are going to start by that activity. After the activity, we are going to talk about the teaching of the genocide through a career life story from a teacher called Rukundo. We are going to look at the first reactions when he was requested to teach the genocide for the first time. We are going to look at the aims he has when he teaches the genocide, the content and teaching methods, and finally the conclusion. The genocide against the Tutsi is one of the century genocide in post-colonial Africa. So when you look at the history of African countries, it's only in Rwanda where after independence a genocide occurred. This genocide is one of the most researched topics when you go to the literature. There are more than 2,000 or 3,000 papers and books on the genocide. However, the way the genocide is taught is not very researched. It's why I tried to conduct research on how the genocide is taught in Rwandan schools. I did a qualitative research where I interviewed 11 teachers. From those 11, I selected this one, Rukundo, who is going to be part of this presentation. Regarding the research question of the research, first of all, I want you to know the topics which are taught, the aims and the method, and why the genocide was taught the way it is during this research. Regarding the activity I want to start with, I invite everybody to take the picture, the paper on the table. There is a blank sheet paper. If you don't have, Sylvester is going to share with you. Try to do this activity. Imagine that they assign you the task to teach the genocide in a Rwandan class. How would you feel? Try to draw something representing how you will feel if they ask you to teach the genocide.
You can draw, or maybe describe if you want.
No, everybody is able to draw. Yeah, we don't need much skills to draw. Draw as you can.
If I'm nervous, I draw this way. you need a sheet of paper or a pen, please notify me.
You can draw a bottle, you can draw anything, it depends on how you are going to explain it to us. Okay? The drawing skills don't matter.
What matters the drawing?
Yeah. Now, I can notice that some have completed their drawing. Now try to explain the rationale behind your drawing and also how you would teach this phenomenon and why. Maybe you can write 2 sentences down your drawing.
Yeah, the rationale behind that drawing. Then how you teach this phenomenon and why.
And that was the stone. Then just I imagine it as I'm the one who is in the front of secondary people whom I'm teaching about genocide. Then what comes in my thoughts is that it's not easy things. I take it as, is this stone going to last in this load? I mean, you take a stone and you put in the loads. Is it going to last in the loads? Oh, maybe someone should just come in the car and park and remove the stone because it can cause an accident, anything. This is bad. So I take this as something that cannot, this young generation going to capture this and keep it and just develop it, take it as serious, or we'll just teach the generation, it's like.
Next descendants.
Okay, this descendants. Yeah, okay. Mu Kinyarwanda byo nabivuga neza kurushaho. Uyu muhanda n'ibuye ririmo nabigereranyije nkaho ufashe ibuye urishyize mu muhanda. Ubwo ni nabigereranya nk'ubumenyi ngiye kubaha koko. Nimba koko ugiye kubaha, ese buzabagumamo? Nimba buzabagumamo se bo bazabaha babokomokaho, bizaba uruhererekane rukomeye. Kuko iribuye mu muhanda ntabwo rizagumamo byanze bikunze. Ibi bizasanga umuhanda ari nini ntabwo bishoboka ko rishobora kuhamara igihe. Nuko nabigereranyije. Ubumenyi ngiye kubaha nizeye bingana iki ko bagiye kubuhamana, bugiye gukura, bugakura, bukaza ngiye kubyigisha. I will be proud. Nzishima kuko ndigisha amateka y'iwacu, ndigisha iby'iwacu, ariko abo mbiha n'abantu bashobora kuba bafite ibindi bintu bibari mu mutwe, young generation kuko batanze secondary schools. N'abantu rero bafite generation ishyushye itwika like bagiye cyane mu bindi bintu. Ni gute rero bagiye guhamana uwo muco ngiye kubaha cyangwa se ayo mateka ngiye kubaha nakomeye bagomba gukigatira kugeza igihe babaye bakuru nabo? Ese koko bazabihamana? Ese koko bizakora uruhererekane rukomeye cyane? Nivyo nibazaga ngewe. Murakoze.
Okay. Do you want to translate this, Sylvester?
Yeah, I'll try. Basically, what he said in Kinyarwanda is that the rod symbolizes the knowledge that the teacher would like to transfer. And then the stone, amidst the rod, symbolizes the fears that the teacher has in terms of asking himself or herself, are these people, these guys, going to take it seriously? Do they understand the dimensions and the depth of what I'm going to tell them? Are they able to take it up and transmit it to other generations as well? Because young people are attracted by violent things, and they want to hear another discourse, not really something horrible. Are they going to take it seriously? Very briefly, that's what in fact. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's listen to the second one. We give the floor to Makusi and then we move on.
So I'm not able to draw. Maybe I will explain more. I can give credit. First I put a teacher who has put his left hand like this. See? Summarizing what? One, maybe I brought this draw from a certain experience I met before. I was with Dr. Johnny Onat. We have met around 1,635 secondary school teachers in Nyanza. In fact, one of the first questions we were asking them was, we studied with them in 2 weeks. Then one of the questions was, how do you feel when you are teaching about genocide and ethnicity? So some of them were like this man. They said, what I'm symbolizing here is scared. And
Scared.
feared.
Yes.
And fear. Secondly, somehow not confident in what they are going to teach. And the rationale behind that, the rationale behind that was, if I do not teach well about these topics, am I going to be treated like a denier? Secondly, some of them, he had some wounds, not yet healed, relating to genocide. So when he has a wound, he does his work seriously to tell or to teach about that wound, about the genocide. That's what I tried to draw here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Makusi.
Okay, so mine is more or less the same as his, because it was a face that is like this. Meaning I wasn't so sure, I was a bit confused. The reason I was feeling confused is because I was thinking, okay, where do I start with these students? That was my first question. The next one was, how much do they know? I need to know, how much they know, because like when you go to a new class, especially that of young people, you have to try and find an entry point. So that's why I have a face like this, wondering, where do I start? What do they know? So in most cases, once I hear what they know through maybe entry notes or general discussion, to hear how much knowledge and how they feel about the whole topic, then I'll have an entry. I'll have an entry point. I'll know how to start based on their level of knowledge. Briefly, that is what my face was about. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The content they teach. Then from also the pictures, we managed to discuss about the content. Then after, I tried to analyze the words, data I got from them, and constructed some categories and themes, and then I created a kind of story from the interview, related to drawings, interview related to pictures also. So it's one of those stories we are going to share during this session. Now, let's see what Rukundo mentioned when he was asked to teach the genocide for the first time. Yeah, I'm not going to read the whole story, but it's somehow close to what you were mentioning. When I was given the course on the genocide to teach the first time, I didn't find it easy. This was the case because I could not imagine what the learners were thinking about the subject. Moreover, during my first year of teaching history, I was challenged on issues related to ethnic groups and the trauma my learners have experienced. In an attempt to come to grips with these challenges I faced, I started reading various resources related to the social groups in Rwanda. I also attended a training course organized by the Ministry of Education, which empowered me in preventing cases of trauma before they occurred. As a result, I feel that I can teach learners how to speak when they are talking about the genocide, the terminologies they are supposed to use, and the terminologies they are to avoid as not offending their neighbors. So when you look at that text, you can notice that also for Rukundo, his first experience was not easy. So apparently, Rukundo fears was due to some aspect like ethnicity, which are actually considered as taboo in the Rwandan society. Means that the government is promoting Rwandan citizenship instead of ethnicity, Rwanda. So dealing with such a topic was risky for Rukundo, so for view of the genocide. However, this view is criticized by external opponents and some scholars who consider this as a strategy of silencing oppositions. However, ethnicity can be avoided while teaching about the genocide. So you can notice that it's a challenge to silence ethnicity, and it's a challenge also to teach the genocide without mentioning ethnicity. It's why Rukundo finds this as a problem. So the tension between government policy and the teaching of a genocide overwhelmed Rukundo. So he was overwhelmed by the policy. For his self-care, Rukundo expressed some fears. But as he was a trained history teacher, he was not discouraged. He decided to look for other resources or to do a kind of continuous professional training so that he can manage to teach the genocide. So the negative emotions, instead of preventing him from teaching the genocide, rather gave him an energy to find means to teach the genocide. Rukundo was asked why he teaches the genocide. When you look at the story I constructed from him, he said, "My primary aim while teaching the genocide is to unite Rwandans and to teach learners the nature of good relationship to the extent that they would not engage in genocide-like atrocities. In line with my primary aim, I teach learners to debate so that they can defend their ideas, make judgment, and take decisions. Given my teaching the genocide experience and my interest in the history of Rwanda, I formed an anti-genocide club here at my school. The club assists the school in the promotion of a culture of peace, tolerance, reconciliation, and patriotism among learners in order to transform them into Rwandan citizens. As part of the activities of the club, learners also are given the chance to debate issues school-wide. So those are the aims Rukundo mentioned while he's teaching the genocide. So we can say that teaching the genocide for nation building seems to have a twofold focus. First, it can help learners to understand the importance of good relationship. And second, it serves as a means of genocide prevention by sensitizing learners to avoid genocidal violence. In other words, teaching the genocide for genocide prevention is intimately linked to living in peace and harmony as an intention stated in the Rwandan history curriculum. As Cole and Barsalu said, history should be taught in a way that inspires young people to believe in their own ability to effect positive changes in society and contribute to a more peaceful and just future. So if you look at that text, you can notice also that Rukundo is teaching genocide so that learners can gain other transferable skills. You can notice that learners should be able to defend their ideas on the genocide through debates. It means that after teaching them after the genocide, they are not only going to acquire values, but they are also going to acquire other transferable skills. They can be able to debate outside and explain what they know about the genocide. So it means that the idea of debate is also linked to genocide prevention, because when they are going to debate outside with even deniers, they are able to have skills, knowledge, and content which can help them to defend what happened in Rwanda. This history teacher also has a sense of historical consciousness when teaching what happened, what is happening, and what could happen. So it means that the genocide for Rukundo is taught within its historical context. Now, what is the content covered by Rukundo when he is teaching the genocide? I think we can have quickly a look at the next slide. When you look at that slide, you can notice that referring to neighboring countries, it is not accepted by all history learners that the existence of different ethnic groups led to the genocide. Another controversial topic that is discussed in my history class when teaching the genocide relates to the issue of a double genocide. And then here comes the idea from one Elena who asked Turuku the question, "Teacher, I think there is also another genocide due to the fact that I heard that some Hutu people died in the Liberation War." And then immediately Rukundo responded to him, "It is not genocide because people who died in the war were not targeted. During the war, there was no planning or intention to exterminate all Hutu. There were few people who were victims of the revenge killings. The government made enough effort to stop this unacceptable attitude. Soldiers who did so were convicted in military courts for their deeds." So you can notice that here, the questions asked by the learners were very tricky and they were not easy for Rukundo, but Rukundo managed to respond to them. Now, what does it mean? First of all, when you look at the first paragraph regarding the existence of ethnic groups in other countries but which didn't do genocide, it means that there is a conceptual challenge between the genocide and our war. was learners who are equating genocide to other killings which occurred in Rwanda. So Rukundo, to respond to him, didn't use the UN definition. Rather, he tried to find his own definition of a genocide, where he said just it is an extermination of a certain group of people. So he tried to find his own explanation. So Rukundo did this so that he can help learners to understand that the genocide most of the time is targeting a certain group of people. In the case of Rwanda, equating the genocide against the Tutsi to a simple war is very sensitive. Even if you hear about radio regarding some persons who are jailed, sometimes when they equate the genocide to a simple war, it's a kind of denial. This is because the opponent of the Rwandese Patriotic Front regime wanted to exploit what was officially called individual and isolated case of revenge perpetrated by some soldiers to connect them to a deliberate extermination. You can notice that there are some scattered killings that the opponent of the regime wanted to equate to the genocide. This was done for the opponent in view of attracting the attention of the international community. You know that the genocide is a concept which is used by people in different ways. In some countries when there is a conflict, sometimes they use the term genocide to attract the attention of the international community. What you can notice here also is that after Verena asked the question, the teacher didn't ask the class to react to the question. It is rather he himself who preferred to respond. You can ask yourself why Rukundo did this. So the teacher-centeredness adopted by Rukundo on this matter is an evidence of the sensitivity of the topic. Rukundo didn't take the risk to raise this sensitive issue. It was raised by Elena. In addition, Rukundo didn't allow the learners to discuss it. He preferred to tell them which narrative to adopt. This preaching was aimed at protecting the teachers and learners' safety by avoiding the propagation of an official narrative which could be considered as genocide denial and divisionism. If you remember the drawing I gave to you, the activity I requested you to do, unfortunately I noticed that the time is running. I asked you to tell us how you can teach this topic. Because of the time, I'm not going into the discussion in the plenary. Rather, let's quickly look at how Rukundo tried to teach the genocide. You can notice through this text that Rukundo is sometimes using group works. Maybe we can ask ourselves, how does he use group works? You can notice that in the second paragraph, he divided the learners of history class into groups so that they can analyze stories related to the genocide and understand the specific decision. For the planning of the genocide, I, for instance, use mainly a study done by the Rwandan Parliament. It deals with the genesis and development of the genocide ideology. For this topic, I use a teacher-centered approach because the document gives a series of hatred policies and extract of speeches. So you can notice that for some aspects, even if Rukundo is using group works, the way of choosing the document to use, he does it very cautiously. he tries to select an official document where he's sure that the message which is conveyed by the official document is not going to propagate hate within the learners. In addition to that, for some topics, he's going to use a kind of teacher-centeredness. So it means that even if the curriculum is proposing to use the participatory approach, on some aspects, Rukundo is very careful, is not involving learners into discussion, fearing that learners can propagate hatred speech in class. Because Sylvester has moved, I'm not going to go into all details, but I think the few slides I projected can help us to understand the philosophy or the challenges Rukundo is facing while he is teaching this topic. Let's move maybe to the conclusion. In conclusion, we can notice that the participatory approach as recommended by the curriculum is challenging. It is challenging when teaching this topic. It's why some teachers, and even Rukundo here, is adopting a kind of self-care. Self-care to avoid harming learners. Because if you accept hatred propaganda in class, you are going to hate some learners. No, to harm some learners. You can also harm the society, because the society is still affected by the consequence of the genocide. There is a text I didn't show you, which talked about a young person who joined a political party youth before the genocide. It's a story Rukundo used to teach the genocide. And from that story, Rukundo asked them some specific questions regarding decision taking. So it means that some activities lead learners to become responsible citizens, because these activities help them to be able to take the right decision. So, briefly, teaching the genocide goes beyond historical knowledge. It imparts values to learners, and these values can cure the Rwandan society scars, and it gives also learners skills to deal with different sources in non-partisan way, and this use of different sources, different information they can acquire by learning the genocide can help them to build a tolerant society. Thank you.
Emmanuel and his friend. Peace and values education is a work of Aegis Trust. Aegis Trust worked with the Minister of Education, and we tried to embed peace and values education, considering the situation that the country overcame. After embedding peace and values education in national curriculum, we tried to do our best so as to accompany it, and we are training teachers, but also we try to distribute books like a teacher's guide and the model lessons plan. I would like to ask you, did you know that those books were distributed into the schools? If yes, you tried to ask teachers how are they using them? Did you ask them if they have impact? They are helping them in solving those challenges that you have mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess the question goes to Amin, Dr. Amin and Dr. Sovana. Another question here.
My name is Gerry van der Wels from Three Mountains Learning Advisors, and my question is to the first two presenters also. While you were presenting, I felt my energy going like down, 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 down. It was very serious what you presented. So I'm wondering how you cope with it and like how you seek to overcome it.
Thank you very much. I want to see if people have questions, and this time I should be selective for one purpose. I'm mindful of our sisters. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ernest. I'm really sorry. So I mean, yeah. Thanks a lot for that. My question, I'm also from Aegis Trust, and we're doing some work around peace education, as you know. So my question also goes in the sense of innocence. Just to know, how much have you, to what extent the picture you were showing could be generalized to all schools? I know that the sample was small, 5 schools, but I would be curious to know, how, even within the small sample you've taken, how much, what is the portion of that very negative picture you've presented, and how much it could be generalized? Because then it brings to drawing, useful recommendations about how things could be improved. Thank you.
The last one, any question for Higiro? Then I will, okay. We'll continue in the afternoon actually, but let's take the last one, then we'll go.
Thank you. My name is Emmanuel Saragwe. I have a question to Higiro, but also to Soma Lending. One question that I would wish both of them to comment. Because I did like their presentation, their study is very important for academia, but also for Rwanda. But my question is whether you've seen some elements of the outcome of teaching about peace. Because we discussed a lot about methodology and challenges, but how teachers and students who are getting this knowledge do accommodate this culture of peace or values of peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very quickly, our presenters will respond to comment on these questions. Let me start with Amin and Silmana. Sorry. Very quickly.
Thank you. Yes, personally, I know Aegis Trust distributed some books. What I didn't know that is whether they were distributed in all schools.
All schools.
So we need to acknowledge that we didn't really focus on those ones, but we asked teachers whether they had received any training or support on the integration of cross-cutting issues generally, and then specifically on peace and values education. They indicated that they had not received any support. So as someone working in the education sector, I know what happens generally when it's just books distributed. So sometimes they end up in the drawers. We know even those textbooks themselves, sometimes they are not used. I don't know what I don't know is the kind of training that Aegis Trust conducted. But what I've noticed also working with teachers, when we support them professionally for their professional development, what works is not just the training, but the support that they get in the schools, in the actual context, to help them to deal with the concepts in their classroom. So I've seen that if there's a training and then we expect them to go and implement, sometimes it doesn't happen. So Maybe taking it together with the question that Sandra asked, the sample is very small. We can't generalize this, but from my other experience, what I've noticed is that this concept is not really understood first by teachers, and then to a lesser extent is integrated in their daily work as teachers. Maybe because it's just a cross-cutting issue and they don't see it as a direct, something that they need to deal with directly. I think maybe it's something that teachers need to be helped to understand. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to just to respond to questions very quickly. The first one is about how we cope with this situation. Of course, sometimes you get shocked, but then as a researcher, you say, okay, I have to move on. I have to observe and look how it is. As it was in our ethical clearance, we couldn't intervene. We couldn't intervene in disrupted the way it is, but of course we're also shocked. Yeah, about if there is a positive aspect about the culture, about the peace education, when you do content analysis of the curriculum, you can see there's a lot of work that has been done if you compare with the previous. There's guidance, enough guidance for teachers to teach positive peace education, but values. But the issue, I wish also when also you are interviewing teachers, you have a hope because they need. They have like that energy to teach peace and move it those values. But as when I was thinking about it and when I was we were doing analysis, I said I wish I had done content analysis and also interviews, but not going to observe what is happening in reality. So I wish that was the case. But when you observe, you don't get the same image. You get this corporal punishment, which is really there. You get as they said, these challenges related to the approach of teaching, learner-centered methodology, which can help learners to discuss, and there's a challenge. There's also organizing the groups. My colleagues talked about that. They are in a group, but they're saying, don't make noise. In another way, don't discuss. In another way, don't share knowledge. Are they learning? So that's also there. But we have also, personally, I have observed also other things which are good. For example, clubs. Learners, they have clubs. Genocide Club, Reconciliation Club. So they talk about peace. They have time for that. So they are both parts. That's thank you.
Maybe just to contextualize this findings. Yes, just one minute. Yeah. It's when the teachers are doing that, they don't have a bad intention. I think we need to get that clear. They think that is the best way to build the culture of peace. That's the best way to discipline the children. That's the best way to manage them and transform them into good citizens for tomorrow. So if they get an alternative, which is what we recommend, it's really going to work. I've seen when we provide the training on positive behavior management, teachers were really, they were sad. They said, what we have been doing, we have been thinking that we are doing good things, but we have been harming our children. Okay. They say we really confess.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. A quick comment on innocent question. It is not resources not to be mentioned. I think it's also a finding. Maybe in the analysis people can think about it. Now, regarding questions from Sarabge, actually, regarding my presentation, when teachers are talking about the genocide, they are also talking about peace education. Because when you look at the aims, as I mentioned, the teacher we talked about one of the aims is to contribute to reconciliation. It's one aspect. And also these teaching methods are a strategy to achieve peace education. When learners are working in group, it's not only collaboration for learning, but also it is an aspect of socialization. If today I'm in a group with one student, we started to be familiar. Another day, if I go in another group with another student, it's also an aspect of social cohesion which starts with teaching methods. And also this issue of critical thinking. There is a story I didn't present where the teacher was asking some questions related to the enhancement of critical thinking. This aspect of enhancing critical thinking can contribute also to peace education because it can help learners to take right decisions. Thank you.
My name is Shast. I normally work with Isengani Manzi, is a local NGO, which is a child-focused organization. But professionally, I'm a clinical psychologist by professional, and I'm a practitioner. I'm here just to share my experience in this project. I will share the experience of a kind of 4-month journey of exploring the narrative, arts-based, contextualized tools in supporting street-connected children to be reintegrated in schools and to be fully connected with other children. I don't know how I will present, because my journey was just learning. I wished I could come with children themselves so that they can present themselves, but unfortunately they have exams this afternoon. It was a shame because I don't know how to present what is not mine. It's really, I'm just talking the creation of children. That's not mine. Probably before we start, can you stand up? And we are going to start with a song in Kinyarwanda. I'm sorry, it's a song I learned from children themselves. And we tried to modify. The song is called Wiboreze.
Let me console you. If I translate.
Yeah. He's a good in English. He will try to help me.
Yeah.
The song is that amazi yo kwiteke kwari make, amazi yo kwiteke kwari make, kwatazamara inyota bikambabaza wihoreze. That's a song I learned from children themselves. And it's a powerful song. When the children were naming their emotional problem, They name their emotional problem, and after naming them, they just sing that kind of song. And they sing it on a circle by singing that song. So it's really a powerful tool I learned from them. Noneho ngiye gutangira ndavuga nk'abantu babiri cyangwa batatu. Nimvuga nkanjye ikibazo cyanjye ngiye kucyita ubupfubyi. Sibyo? Ndavuga nti ubupfubyi noneho mwese muravuga ngo chansite tumwiyoreze. Sibyo? Nawe umujene turazeranye wowe wanje. Uburwayi. Yitwa Dorcas. Tureta tumwita Dorcas tumwiyoreze. Sibyo? Okay. Amazi yo kwitegekwa ari make, amazi yo kwitegekwa ari make, batazamara inyota bikambabaza. Mwihoreze ubupfubyi. Agahinda. Dushaka tuvuge gusa ngo mwihoreze amazina tuyihoreze. Sibyo? Twatangiye amazi yo kwitegekwa ari make, amazi yo kwitegekwa ari make, batazamara inyota bikambabaza. Mwihoreze ubupfubyi. Mwihoreze uburwayi. Mwihoreze agahinda. Mwihoreze. Mwihoreze ubushomeri. Mwihoreze amazi yo kwitegekwa ari make, amazi yo kwitegekwa ari make, batazamara inyota bikambabaza. Mwihoreze. Murakoze. Thank you very much.
It could be being an orphan. It could be health conditions. It could be poverty, unemployment. And whenever this was said, he said, we will console you. Even though you have poverty, even though you have unemployment, even though you are an orphan, we will console you. That was basically the song.
So, this is one of the tools created by children themselves in emotional support. So this action research, it was just being done with former street-connected children. I will just a little bit quickly to remind some problems that street-connected children may have. Street children may have exposure to different traumatic issues and abuse. In Rwanda, of course, you have children in the street because of the results of 1990 genocide consequences. We still have dysfunctional society, impaired society, extreme poverty, family conflict in the family, dysfunctional families, orphanhood, child labor, illiteracy, parental skills, etc., etc. I will just go quickly to how the project was designed. It was, of course, the participatory action research. This research, of course, was started with a reflection which have been done with a team of myself and 36 children, both from primary schools, 12 primary schools from here in Kigali, most of them in Gasabo, where we try to identify the tools they contextualize exercise, games that should be used in healing, in reintegrating those children back to schools. After identifying those exercises, including Mirolese, we developed to conceptualize together the research questions. That was the first two steps, reflection and plan steps. And then the second step was just rehearsing tools that have been identified, sharing experiences, answering to some research question, and reflecting on the settings that had to be used in those 12 schools identified. And then we had, of course, to observe the emotions that were happening. You will see when you were seeing how when we were singing we started having emotions. Yeah, so when we were, the real problem, children talking the real problem, of course the children were analyzing their emotions. Of course, it was also a time of data collection, modifying tools and collecting the new tools that were being created by children themselves, and it was a circle. And of course, that was the first circle was for the 36 facilitators, researchers. 36 researchers, those included 3 children from each school, among the 12 schools, and 1 teacher. And they did this circle during the 4 months. Of course, at the school level, while those researchers, they did the 5 workshops, 1 workshop per month, at school level, they created the healing clubs. The healing clubs that included those former street children and the other children. And they had to meet once a week. And they went through 16 workshops, 16 sessions. So also they went through the same circle where they created setting, those clubs, they informed students, they created groups, and then they practice the exercise, the therapeutic tools, those narrative-based and the contextualized developed. And then also they have to identify and to observe the emotion and the changes and the practicability of the exercise developed. As I was saying, it was just a participatory action research because it was just something done by children and teachers, of course, with us. And we had those 36 facilitators selected from those 12 schools, and we went through 5 workshop sessions around making groups and facilitation, facilitating healing exercise in their respective groups, collecting data, recording and reporting, and of course they had to present the finding, the outcome each month. What was the first workshop? The first workshop, it was just launching the project. and discussing, creating the project objectives together, which the objective created by children themselves. The first objective was to caring children, the integrated children, and create their mental health awareness. The second objective, it was to analyze the applicability of those contextualized narrative therapy tools created by children and teachers themselves, and discovering the new therapeutic exercises and games, as well as collective data. Those are the objectives identified by group researchers. Of course, the other objective was just intervention, to organize and to facilitate intervention workshop at school level, to create trust among group members, to socialize with group members, including those street connected children, openness, relaxation, and to create tools that should help them to explore and assess the problem and the needs of former street connected children. That was the first workshop. It was mainly around rushing the research and creating objectives. The second workshop was around how the data will be collected, presented through experience sharing, observation of how tools were practiced in clubs. It was, of course, continuation of research, setting research question, and also it was also data collection from the session the first session happened at school level, analyzing and recording of data, and of course practicing and rehearsing the 5 exploration and healing tools that was created from our servant children. Those the exercise practiced was a time when my heart was open, igihe umutima wanjye wafungutse, musical story, garden of hope, ubusitani bw'icyizere, and umbrella of problems. Those are some of the exercises rehearsed during the second workshop. We can do just a small exercise among from those. I was saying that it's a shame that children are not here because they should be the best one to present. Can you take just a simple piece of paper? We can do, let me say, two exercises from there. The last 2 exercises, the garden of hope and the umbrella of problems. You start with umbrella of problem. Umutaka w'ibibazo. Try to draw an umbrella. What's matter is not just how the drawing is beautiful. Just an umbrella. An umbrella, it protects us from rain or strong sun, isn't it? Umutaka utuprotege ibibazo cyangwa ikizuba kinini cyinshi. Ikizuba cyinshi ntabwo ari kinini.
Yes. Umbrella protects us from several issues. Like the strong.
Okay, so under the umbrella, you are going to write down under the umbrella the different problems that are happening now for you. Imvura y'ibibazo iri kukunyagira these times.
Above the umbrella.
Above the umbrella.
Imagine the rain.
Yes. Imagine the rain.
Rain of problems.
The rain of problems.
Yes.
Is coming.
Rain.
Yes. You write down what kind of rain.
Imagine a rainfall. And this rainfall are problems.
You just write down.
Write that them down. Yumvura tuyitize.
Yumvura tuyitize.
Let's name this rainfall. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Imvura y'ibibazo iri kukunyagira these times. It's okay. It's your rain, which may be different from Makosi rain.
For instance, my rain might be unemployment. Unemployment, my rain. That could be an example. Could be poverty. That's my
It's up to you.
It's up to you, it's individual.
So, biriya biti bigira umutaka, urabona biwuproteja, biwufata ugatuma uguproteja, nubwo imvura iri kutunyagira bikomeye, there are some protectors.
These separators of the umbrella are like protectors.
Aho ngaho uri bushyiremo ibintu biri kugukingira iyo mvura ntunyagirwe ngo utohe. Kuri ziriya nkingi zigize umutaka.
Protectors.
Munsi y'umutaka ku buryo imvura igwa hirya.
So for us, we imagine what is protecting us from this rain. These ones.
Try to distract
us from this rain.
If children were here, it should be really beautiful. But it's okay.
Exactly.
Did you finish? Someone? Someone can share?
They are still finalizing.
They are still finalizing. At the same time, draw me a beautiful garden with beautiful trees and flowers. And imagine that garden is a garden of your hopes. What the names of those trees which are in your garden of hopes?
This is my umbrella. And the rainfall problems, I have a poverty, large family, ignorance, insecurity, and so on. Yeah. And the protectors, there is the education, employment, work, courage, prayers. Yes.
Is it possible to share your garden of hope if you?
Yes, okay, my garden of hope. There are many trees and the flowers. You have house or a villa, a house, a building. I have brilliant children, a car, heaven, friends, and the church.
You see now, he has beautiful protectors and a strong hope. Anyone who can share? Anyone else?
This is my umbrella. And I have the problems. Ukraine war, high prices, unemployment, COVID, yeah, poverty, orphanhood. And I have a protectors, government.
Government?
Yes. Okay. Accommodation, family, prayers. And also I have the Garden of Hope, house, degree, country, family, and the banana tree.
Very wonderful. So, those are the examples of the exercise done and created by children. And when they are, even if we are adults, you see how they are beautiful exercise, even if we are adults. And for children, they are also beautiful. So, can you stand up? I will present as a turn. We're going to sing again. Huh? And dance, of course. Okay? What we are going to do is Sankalewa. Do you know Sankalewa? They say, yeah. Yes. Zamina mina, zamina mina Sankalewa. Zamina mina Sankalewa. Zamina mina, 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 zamina mina Sankalewa. Noneho rero ukuntu bagakina umuntu umwe agiye kujya hanze.
So one of us went to exit the room now.
Turatekereza akantu kitwa Sankalewa.
We are going to identify an item or something which we call Sankalewa.
Niturangiza araza ashakishe Sankalewa. Bakayibone.
The person out of the room will get in and identify, try to imagine what could be what you have chosen as that Sankalewa.
Aha. Kugira ngo tuze kubyoroshya turayishakira turayishyira ku bantu.
For that to happen and to make the task easier, we will choose something visible on a person.
For example, Sankalewa tuyigize akakara.
For instance, we can nominate that object thereby honored as Sankalewa.
Ngiye kwishaka murebe. Sibyo? Iyo avuze aho iherereye turavuga ngo yego, yavuga aho itari tutihoya.
If the person to imagine Sankalewa does really touch the real thing, we say yego, yes. If not, we say oya, no.
Okay.
Until the time the person is able to imagine and locate the real Sankalewa.
Zamina mina zamina mina Sankalewa. Zamina mina zamina mina Sankalewa. Zamina mina zamina mina Sankalewa. Zamina mina zamina mina Sankalewa. Ah, ni Sankalewa. Uyu ni Sankalewa. Abadamu ni Sankalewa. Oh, Sankalewa. Zamina mina zamina mina Sankalewa. abagabo ni Sankarewa. Sankarewa, Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. Ah, ni Sankarewa. Ah, ni Sankarewa. Sankarewa, Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. Uyu ni Sankarewa. Uyu ni Sankarewa. Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. Inkweto ni Sankarewa. Ishati ni Sankarewa. Rinete ni Sankarewa. Oh, Sankarewa. Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. Aka ni Sankarewa. Ninde rero wakwiyaminiya akajya hanze.
Please volunteer to exit and then we... Yes. It's volunteering now. Going out and then we will be coming in. So we close the door, we choose our Sankarewa.
I will.
Let's make him Sankarewa himself. And especially his shoes.
Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. 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 Ah, ni Sankarewa. Ah, ni Sankarewa. Ariya ni Sankarewa. Oh, Sankarewa. Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. Ah, ni Sankarewa. Sankarewa. Ah, ni Sankarewa. Samina Mina, Samina Mina, oh Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. 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 Ah, Sankarewa. Ah, Sankarewa. Sankarewa. Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. Samina Mina, Sankarewa. Sankarewa. Oh, Sankarewa. Oh, Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. Ah, ni Sankarewa. Sankarewa. Ah, ni Sankarewa. Ah, ni Sankarewa. Ah, besha. Atsinzwe Sankarewa. Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. Abagabo ni Sankarewa. Oh, Sankarewa. Samina Mina, Samina Mina, Sankarewa. Uyu ni Sankarewa. Uyu ni Sankarewa. Samina Mina, Ikote ni Sankarewa. Inkweto ni Sankarewa. Thank you very much. That is, I will not go through all exercises because you have so many exercises. I wanted just to give you examples. So the workshop 3, there was storytelling and story gifting, garden of sorrow. We have a garden of hope and a garden of sorrow. We have second story creation, house of life or keys of life. I wanted also to explain, to practice house of life, but she's telling me no time. Empty chair introduction. The fourth workshop, those were the exercises. Love being me. Do you love being you? What do you like from you? You know, I like my beautiful smile. Do you see how it is beautiful? It is. Now ushobora kwireba ukareba how beautiful you are. So that's loving being, team of life, tree of life, thermometer, making less of certificate, etc., etc. So the outcomes, around 126 street connected were fully integrated within the school system and with others. And it was the clubs had 195, including 126 street connect children and 69 other children, because we mixed it. It was not just a group of street connected children. Just go back to conclusion, because those are just examples. With those exercises, they helped really children to rebuild a sense of life, sense of self, autonomy, controlling the process of recovery from traumas and from. You see how we feel when we were in Sankalewa? How did you feel? It was good, isn't it? N'abana rero iyo bari kumwe noneho n'abandi batakiri babana bo mu muhanda, they feel good. Self-awareness, self-analysis, self-understanding. When you did your umbrella of problem, your garden of hope, you do your self-analysis and you do your self-awareness, you do your self-understanding. And we learned how culture works. Culture is very important in healing, and the arts are the best tool that may be used to emotionally support people, emotionally support mainly children. Children are active in creating the tools that may help them, not just as a psychologist coming to tell I'm an expert. And I said, children are expert of their lives. They are expert of their problems. They are expert of the solutions. And the metaphors, games are very important in the emotional and psychological support. Thank you very much.
So these groups, as Chester said, are sort of half of them were former street children. And this is them participating in some of their workshops. And there you go, I think they're doing Sankaliwa. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
As you see. And this is them doing a peace garden, their garden of peace. Anyway, back to academics. Let me just ask you a question. How are you feeling? It's an honest question. How are you feeling?
Fine. I'm feeling fine. As far as I'm concerned.
I'm just getting this to keep me in time. Feeling fine. I think some people are feeling, maybe you're feeling a bit worn out. It's towards the end of the day. Maybe some people are feeling pumped from what they've just been listening to. Our feelings are important. And this final session looks at something called social and emotional learning. It's a part of growing up, it's a part of learning that we often fail to consider. So I think we're all familiar with the idea that our mind has two domains. We have the kind of cognitive part of our brain, which is actually here. This is the frontal lobe. So this is the part of our brain that does our thinking, that's able to reflect and reason. And then we have the affective part of the brain, the emotional core. And all of us are basically a mixture of emotional response to a situation and reflected response. Sometimes our emotions and our thoughts are in harmony with each other, but many times they're not. And so part of building peace, we talked about kind of inner peace, the idea that peace is relational. A part of this is actually about helping children and young people as they grow to start to understand what it is that they're feeling, and to interpret how other people are feeling, and to learn how to engage and how to control their own, not control, how to sort of regulate their feelings, and how also to engage with others. You're probably familiar with this. This is Bloom's taxonomy of thinking skills, starting with the most basic thing being able to remember, being able to understand, applying knowledge, analysing, all the way to the top, which is creating knowledge. And as we heard previously, I think a lot of schooling kind of focuses on the bottom, sort of, have children remembered information. We seldom take them higher. All of this is important, but I'm going to ask you to park it for now, because all of this actually is to do with the cognitive, reflective part of our brains. We're going to be talking about another thing, emotions. So here, oh, what am I doing? I'm trying to zoom in and you can't. This wheel, this is a wheel of social and emotional skills. Things like becoming self-aware, being able to manage yourself, being socially aware, being able to take responsible decisions, and relationship skills. There we go. This is just an example of an emotional skill. You may be familiar with this experiment. It's not my favourite experiment. There's plenty of critiques of this experiment, but this is the Marshmallow Experiment, where basically a child is put in a room, they're given a marshmallow on a plate, and they're told, you can have that marshmallow, but if you wait 5 minutes, I'll give you more. Or you can eat that anytime you want. And they film these children, and this poor boy is just staring, wanting to have it, but not knowing if he should eat it or if he should wait for the greater gift. And this experiment was done to demonstrate a emotional skill that can impact on life outcomes later, which is the ability to defer gratification, to wait for something. Important to know, though, that sometimes we can wait too long for things and we should just eat the marshmallow. There's not actually a right or wrong. Let's come to this, though. So this is a question I'm going to pose. How are emotional skills developed? Are we born with them, or can they be learned? If these skills can be learned, can they be taught in school? And if so, how? And I'm going to give you a couple of minutes now on your tables to actually reflect on those questions. And I'd be interested to get a sense of what people think. And apologise in advance that I could give you an hour or two and you'd still be talking. But I'm only going to give you a couple of minutes just to reflect on those questions. How are social and emotional skills developed? Are we born with them? Are they learned? Go ahead, and then I'll ask a few people to feedback. Oh, of course.
Some extent. Some kids with fetal alcohol syndrome have a harder time with that. And trauma can also affect how well you're able to. I think she's really
If you're confused, okay. Forgive me for already cutting in. I just want to get a sense. So let's have an answer to this question. I can tell you just want to keep talking. That's fine. You deserve that time to answer that question. Okay. You'll have more time to discuss. So, let me start with the most simple question. Are we born with these skills or are they learned? We'll give you kind of one option or the other. So, hands up if we think we're born with those skills. Let's see. Okay, hands up if you think they're learned. Hands up if you think neither of those things are... You said something different earlier. I heard you. What did you say earlier on your table?
Yeah, I have said both.
Both. Okay. Yes, good. I think that's fair. So, children are born... Oh, I'm being told to speak more slowly. I apologise. Children are born with some sort of innate personality and dispositions. We know that. That's true. So that they are born to a degree, but they're also, these are learned skills. Now, a point I'll just make and move on from it, because we don't have a group looking at this, and we should have done. I think there are some themes missing within our thematic groups. One of those themes is early childhood education, because all of the science on this, there's psychiatrists and psychologists who've been studying this know that between the age of 0 to 3 is the most significant age where a child's brain makes these neurological connections that's developing their social and emotional skills. And certainly 3 to 6, and by the age of 6, a lot of these are set already in a child. So, although this kind of teaching does pertain to teenagers and adults, it's really important we understand that this is something that has to be done early in life. Now, the other questions that we asked is about how, if they can be learned, how can they be taught? We'll park that question for a bit, but that's the overarching question today, is what role schooling can play. This is just another demonstration of social emotional skills. So what's happening here? This is a familiar scene. Anyone have children? I have 5, and I've been through this 5 times. And it's normal. We understand that a little child isn't able to express well how they're feeling, so they will have a tantrum. You can't really see this well, but this boy is also, he's actually picking up his tray and shaking it. So when we see it in a child this age, we may start to question, do we need to be helping this person to express their frustrations differently? What's happening here? Exactly. We'll move on. Now, what we saw examples of there was 3 examples of people who lack a particular emotional skill. There's lots of emotional skills. That emotional skill, you might describe it as being able to kind of control your temper, to regulate how you're feeling. Somebody mentioned earlier on the increase of violence in schools. Why is that happening? What are the skills that children from a young age are not being taught? So, a couple of other thoughts. I don't want us to think that this is... Sorry, I will talk slowly. I don't want us to think that this is only about keeping your temper, though. There's lots of different emotional skills. For example, the ability to concentrate, the ability to stick at something, empathy. I want to talk now about recognizing our feelings. So actually, let me go one slide ahead. There's a system known as, in English, as ruler, which is that children need to learn to recognize, understand, label, express, and regulate their emotions. I just want to say something about recognizing. So how do we recognize what we're feeling? There's 2 types of emotion. There's what's called integral emotions. Now these are emotions that are directly caused by the current action. So right now, my current action is that I'm stood in front of you with a microphone, and I'm talking, and there's that brings emotions. It brings things like nerves, checking the time, worrying about if I'm saying the right things, and am I talking too fast, and am I hitting the right points, and how is this going to come across? Then there's incidental emotions, and these are emotions that aren't connected to what we're directly doing, but they may be connected to something else going on in our life at that time. Like last night when I checked my emails, I discovered that all my savings, which is in an investment bond, the company has gone bust. And so that gives me an underlying emotion that maybe I'm not expressing today, but it's there. Or maybe somebody argued with their husband or wife this morning, or maybe you have an exam later that you're worried about. So these types of emotions also have an impact. And so now think about that child in school who has come out of a context. We don't know what that could be. Could be a very loving, stable home. It could be a home with an alcoholic parent, or where there's domestic violence, or where there's severe financial worry. They've come into school carrying those feelings. Then they're feeling hungry because it's nearly lunchtime. Maybe they're feeling social anxiety because they're getting called names. And then they're being asked to concentrate, and then the teacher comes and gives them a clip round the ear because they appear not to be concentrating on their work. A child at any given moment is dealing with an incredible amount of emotional interference. And so that's what this is about, ruler. And we've been doing research for the last 6 to 8 months in some schools in the southern province to look at whether we can take some methodologies that have been developed primarily in North America, and whether we can make them culturally and contextually relevant to children in Rwanda. Now, this is called a mood chart, and it's one of the key parts of the ruler method. You probably can't see that completely, but I'll just explain that there's 100 words on here, and all 100 words are a feeling. So up here we have livid, enraged, irate, furious, disgusted, apprehensive, sullen, despair. Over here we have serene. Over here we have excited. Here we have satisfied. So these are 100 different words that can express feelings, and in all their complexity. Some of you may have seen this. I think I shared this a couple of years ago, and it's a meter. So the further from left to right you go, the words change. Let me just read a few words from left to right, and I want you to see if you can recognize what's happening. So we've got disgusted, troubled, satisfied, hopeful, and lively. What's happening to those words as we move from left to right? Any ideas? Yes, Sylvester.
I could sense some kind of progression, positive progression towards positive mood.
Correct, yeah. So the further to the right we go, the more positive that feeling is. So we may say we don't like feeling things towards the left, towards the right's more positive. Let's try going up from top to bottom now. So I've got here restful, at ease, secure, hopeful, amused, enthusiastic, thrilled. This is hard. I know this is hard. I'll tell you, it's the level of energy. So if we were to make it really simple, this might be angry, this might be sad, right? Sad is not an energetic emotion, anger is high energy, sad is lower energy, but they're both not nice. This might be excited, happy, which we think is a positive thing. This might be calm and peaceful. Okay? And so at any moment, we have reasons to feel all of these things. And in a child's brain, the emotional part of their brain is throwing these feelings at them that the cognitive part of their brain has to make sense of. So we wanted to know, can this translate? And that was not easy. So we did an experiment. In fact, I'll just show you. We took this in. These are teachers at the Rwanda Academy, actually. And you see all of these cards. We've put these cards on it's like a puzzle, and we asked them to put this together. So first of all, we tried to translate words into Kinyarwanda, and then we put them and to see, do people agree about which are high and which are low energy? And there was a little bit of disagreement, but more or less it was understood. There you go, you can see them there. They've assembled it. But the challenges that we found were these. So I pose it as questions here. One of the challenges that we found is that there were not as many words in Kinyarwanda to express emotions as there are in the English language. Often, we went to several schools and did this with teachers, and the teachers would say back to us, well, we don't have a word for that, but we kind of go, like, or, they would show facial expressions and tones of voice. So it's not that the feeling doesn't exist, the feeling is there, but there was a question, but do we have a word for that? Or do we have a means to express it? So one of the questions that we've been asking is, what emotions exist? What feelings do people feel on a daily basis? Another thing that's interesting, that in terms of, so we're talking here about cutting across cultures, is do we interpret body language, tone of voice differently across cultures? For example, let me pose you a question. In Rwanda, what does it mean if a person is quiet?
It has so many meanings.
Many, okay.
It has many meanings.
Okay, true, it does. It does. One of the things, though, that we've sort of observed, I've certainly observed in the time that I've lived here, is that quietness here, compared to someone who talks a lot, quietness can be seen as seriousness. It can actually elevate a person's status. It can be, it can mean a lot of things. I mean, it can make that person more mysterious. But there is a sense as well that within different cultures, the degree to which people feel they should express themselves is different. And so we came up across these kind of barriers that in some cultures they prioritize the idea that everyone should express themselves, everybody should be telling everybody how they're feeling all the time. In other cultures, and I think this is what I felt, maybe you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, I felt that maybe in Rwanda that's less culturally appropriate to constantly be telling everyone how you're feeling. So this isn't when we talk about expressing, we're not saying everybody has to go around expressing themselves in that way, but it's about how do we choose to communicate our feelings to people. Now, this is what we came up with. This was our first attempt at a Kinyarwanda mood chart. We don't have time to go into it now, but I'm happy to send this to anybody who wants it. And Natasha, who's not here today, has had a go at going a bit further. You won't be able to see that, but she's tried to develop the full 100 words in Kinyarwanda. But it's probably very debatable. Now the key point to know about this, though, is it's just a tool. So you can have something like this in the classroom. And one of the key things that I think has come through in the earlier session today was that teachers struggle to deal with cross-cutting themes because they're being asked to do too much. And the teachers that we visited in the southern province basically told us that too. So we asked the question, what if instead of making this cross-cutting, we just made it 5 minutes, like a 5-minute activity that you do at the start of the lesson, Would that be more reasonable? And they said, well, if you gave us the activities. And I think that that's fair. I think that's reasonable, that we need we can't expect people overnight to sort of become social and emotional learning teachers, SEL teachers. So we developed some activities, and one of them is to simply have the mood chart in the classroom and to use it to help children to learn these words and what they mean. So you could be doing story time, for example, and you could say, which of these emotions do you think this character is feeling at this moment? Something that we tried was to use emojis, but it didn't work. We found that emojis didn't cut across cultures. For example, a green face for being sick makes sense to me. It might not make sense to many of you. So we scrapped this. We don't think that this works. You see us here, we're experimenting with it. Now, there's a whole book that we're producing, and that we've already shared large parts of it with these 3 schools, with these 5-minute activities. I'm just going to quickly show you one of them. It's called a mood poem. And we're nearly done, but I may ask you in a moment if we get a chance to do one of these. And so the idea is that you state a feeling. So, for example, happiness. And then you put a colour to it. So happiness is as, give me a colour somebody. What colour is happiness? Yellow. Turquoise? Yellow or turquoise? What should we go with? Yellow, okay. So happiness is as yellow as, and then think of something that's as yellow as happiness. The sun. So happiness is as yellow as the sun. It sounds like, what does it sound like? Children having fun. Well, that even rhymes.
Exactly.
Wow. So happiness is as yellow as the sun. It sounds like children having fun. I feel happiness when?
My work is done.
My work is done. And it doesn't have to rhyme. So that's a mood poem. And it can be happiness sounds like, happiness smells like, it tastes like, it feels like. And some of the children did these poems for us. And I wish I had them with me. Unfortunately, on a flash drive, but I left in England. But the children wrote these poems. Even, we're talking kind of P4, P5. It's a simple, because it's easy for them to do. And actually, often they've got more abstract imaginations, and they were quite good at this. And there were some beautiful poems that helped to express feelings. Now that's something a teacher could do for 5 or 10 minutes, and it's, guess what, it's Kinyarwanda, it's English, it's part of their school learning. Here's another activity that we did. So this is a book of activities called Dear Vanessa. And so, have you ever seen those magazines where somebody writes in and sort of says like, Dear Vanessa, I've got a problem. So it's a letter, and the children read this letter and they have to do something with it. Now, one of the things they could do is write back to the friends. So one activity is get the children to write a letter back and give their advice. Like, so it might be, a letter, Dear Vanessa, I'm being bullied at school, this has happened, can you advise me? And then the children write back and give advice. We wanted to be more active than that, so we got them doing a role play. So just from the 2 pictures here, see if you can work out what's happening. Any thoughts? This is scene 1, and then we have scene 2 going on here. This is the children trying to win an Oscar. Yeah, so this kid, he was absolutely brilliant, this boy. He convinced me that he was in pain. So he's being bullied, he's pulled, his leg's being pulled. And then what are these girls doing? Yeah, they're bringing comfort. And it's a simple 5-minute role play, but the children got a lot out of it. And it helped them just to think about relationship skills. And what do we do in this situation or that situation? So we've come to the end of the slides, and we're at 4 o'clock. I did want to just sort of pose a question, just to give you kind of a couple more minutes to discuss. You can't possibly talk about social emotional learning, just like you can't talk about mental health or any of the other topics that we're exploring in the 40 minutes or so that we're giving today. So do engage with this, do read the book chapter when it comes out. But essentially what we've had then is for the last 6 months, these kids were, well, from kind of May last year up to December, the children and the teachers put into practice some of the activities that we gave to them. And then in December, we went back to those same schools and asked the children about their experience and what did you remember? And you know, the activity that the children remembered the best actually, which I don't have time to do today, but you can do this on your own at home. We played them a piece of music. It's a piece of classical music called Lark Ascending by Vaughan Williams, and it's, if you listen to it, it sounds like a bird fluttering its wings and taking off. And the children closed their eyes and they listened, and then they had to share. They had to imagine and picture what they're hearing and share with their friends what they were seeing. All of them had different stories, all of them valid. It helped them to see that we can have the same experience but come at it differently. And that there's no right or wrong answer, it's just an experience. But when we went back, the children not only remembered that, but some of the children had actually started listening to such music as a way of calming themselves down. And they told us that, you know, when I feel sad now, I go and listen to that kind of music. It was interesting. So these are the sorts of experiences that we've had. It's a work in progress. I don't think that we're there. I don't think we've found all the answers. But what we're trying to do is just work out how do we embed this in the school. So your final quick discussion is to answer these questions. And I'll put this up, this might help. So firstly, I'd be interested to know sort of how valuable do you think learning social and emotional skills will be for children in Rwanda? What skills do you think are important? And what opportunities can you see for them to develop those skills? So think about what skills, how valuable are they? What are some of the opportunities and ways that children can develop these skills? So to take just a few minutes, just so that we've wrapped that up, and then I will hand back. Any questions, by the way, on that before I set you off on that task? Yes?
I just wanted to go back to what you said at the beginning, not to disrupt the whole process, but when you asked the question, why do you think there's an increase? Oh, sorry, yeah. Why do you think, when you asked the question, or you posed the question rhetorically, why is that, do you think there is an increase of violence in schools? I think the question is much broader than the skill set that the children are having, and I wondered whether there is, this is possibly contentious, but an element of righteous anger in the hands of the teachers that actually they don't know. They may need to know how to control it. I'm not condoning violence, but there's something in there that life is changing and they feel able to say, actually, we're not going to put up with this anymore.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. I would just say in response to that, because I should have said this earlier, there is no such thing as a wrong emotion. Emotions are never wrong. There's not a morally right or morally wrong emotion. There's not an incorrect emotion. We all feel the full range of these emotions. And sometimes, when you're experiencing injustice, you should feel angry. So, social emotional learning is not about telling children never to feel angry. It's about telling children how to recognize when they feel angry, how to understand the cause of their anger. So if we go back to ruler, so sorry, I think that Angie's point is important that where are you? So how to recognize, I'm feeling angry. How to understand, why am I feeling angry? How to give it a name so we can talk about it to other people. But then how do we express our anger in a way that's reflected, that leads to a more positive outcome for yourself? And you can express anger as well. It's not wrong to express anger. But how do we express it? And then also, how do we regulate? So how do we make sure that that feeling of anger doesn't overtake us to the point that we self-harm or harm others? Because that's what and we could have said the same about being in love. I'll never forget the day when I was in college that my teacher asked me, "Are you in love, Sam?" because I was just staring into space, and he was right. I was. And I thought, how did you know? So, but you know, great love, you know, who doesn't want to feel in love? But when it's making me not produce good work because I'm just dreaming through the lesson, that's not helpful. So that's what this is about. I'll leave that up actually while you have a brief discussion and then we'll close.
In the Rwandan or in the Rwandan context, where we said that there's no wrong or right emotion, and we can help children to express their emotions. Then I think of maybe a culture where emotions are not supposed to be expressed. Some emotions anyway. Like anger, like the kid who was rolling down. I imagine maybe in the Rwandan context you would be beaten even more. So how do we, how do we marry these two? And then I imagine myself, maybe during the research you talked to teachers. Did you have some of this coming out from the teachers themselves? Yeah, so yeah, thank you.
Today's opportunity for me to learn. One is that the journey to education for positive peace is really long, and it reminds me that we need to always be ready to continue learning. And number two, I've thought of inter-school collaboration in this difficult journey. So if schools can really always make sure they are collaborating, they are learning from each other, they are working together, I think this would make the journey somehow easier. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent point on this as well. So great things tomorrow. Have a good afternoon. I'm going to have to. Oh, there's coffee, so you can continue the conversation on your way out if you want to mingle and so on. But we're not going to keep you here because it's 4:30, and that means we have to stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.
Shutterstock Music.